Welcome back to part 2 of the 1991 Chevy truck ball joint and bushing install. In the last video we took all the bushings and ball joints out of the control arms. We found a small imperfection where the sway bar end links attached to the control arms. The hole is wallowed out a bit, so we're going to go and weld that up and make it round again, and then do a little bit more cleaning to get them looking pretty. I did take them out and power wash them, and that got most of the crud off, but I need to do a little bit more deep cleaning to get some caked on stuff off, a little sanding, and then we're going to paint them black, make them look nice, and then we'll put the new bushings and ball joints in. So let's get started. Okay, here we're looking at the control arms again. I got them on the work table, and you can see how that is wallowed out. And you can kind of see in this area here where the bushing was rubbing, and it was slowly deteriorating in that direction, and on the other one same way. At this angle it's even more pronounced. There you can see it. All right, let's fix those holes and make them round. Okay, here's the first one. It's pretty round, looks a lot better. All right, now we're going to do number 2, and then we'll start the cleanup. Now that all the parts have been painted, it's time to start assembly. One thing I noticed before, I had mentioned about marking where these we're going to start with the upper control arm, and they don't go in all the way, and to make a mark so you can get the spacing correct. What I didn't realize, and once I got these out and got to looking at them, that on the new bushings, that there is a ridge. It's kind of hard to see. There's a little ridge right there that's already cast into this, so we know how far to push them in. On the old ones, as you can see, I couldn't tell if that was a buildup of rust or what, but there's clearly a line right there how far the bushing was pressed in. So we're going to take these old ones, get rid of those, and we're going to put in the new ones. I'm going to put just a little oil on it so they'll push in just a little easier, so it's not direct metal to metal contact. And I've already cleaned out the inside of the holes here a bit, and they should press in without too much trouble. We'll find out. All the parts I'm using are all MOOG, and I will post below the video in the description below where I bought them and links so that you can buy the same one if you want to. I'm using a ball joint service kit. It's a Maddox MA10-1. I'm pretty sure I got that off of Amazon, I don't recall. Anyway, let's put this together. Okay, here's a little oil. Put it around the top of this fitting here. Doesn't need a lot. Just wipe it on. There's something to reduce the friction as you put it in, so it's not metal on metal. And this tool requires a 22mm wrench to tighten. There's one. We use a cup on the receiving end. Slide the bushing in there just a bit. And really, when it comes to pressing it, there's not a whole, it doesn't go that far. Change the angle of this a little bit. And the bushings are in. You can see it's all the way up to that little line. And it won't go any further. Okay, now let's do the ball joint. Ball joint's pretty simple on the upper because it's bolted in. See if I can give you the part number on that. There's only one way it can go because of the pattern of the bolts. And it goes from the top. Take the grease cup off, put it in this way. Here's the hardware that comes with the kit. You've got 4 nuts, 8 bolts, the Castle nut with the cotter pin, the Zerk grease fitting, and of course the grease cup. In my application, we're not going to need these longer bolts. One thing I noticed in putting this together, the ball joint, you'll notice it's got some grease in it. Not a whole lot, but it does have some. So you want to be sure after you install it and put it in here before you put it on your vehicle to go ahead and grease it. Don't forget, otherwise there may not be enough grease in this joint for it to wear out prematurely. Something the kit didn't contain was lock washers. The nuts are just a standard nut. They don't have nylon inserts. I don't want to take a chance of them backing off, so I'm just going to install them with those. It's a 5/16 size, and these were $1.60 for 50. I don't know how long I've had them. That's pretty cheap. With all the bolts installed, we just install the grease cup. Got the nut. And we want to install the Zerk fitting. It's an 8mm. Okay, it's in there. Alright. Alright, that's the upper control arm. You can see that grease fitting's in, the bolts are all in. Everything's tight, everything's ready to go. This one's finished. Now let's go on to a lower control arm. Again, a little bit of oil just around the base here. And what I noticed is on the lower ball joint, the grease cup fitting, the rubber boot, I should say, is seems like it's bonded or it's attached to this. It's not loose like the upper was. The lower control arms are really kind of difficult to work with just because they're heavy. They're very heavy. Now we'll release this and take it out. It looks good. They're bushings. They're 2 different sizes because in your lower control arm the front is wider than the back. So you have 2 different sizes. And this one, I felt a little burr right here, so I'm going to use a file, take that off. There we go. That might have been a problem when trying to put the new bushing in. One thing I can say about the lower control arms, at least in this situation, is that they were the hardest bushings to get out, and they're the hardest ones to get in. And what I finally had to do on this second bushing here, the more narrow one, as the bushing goes in, it goes through the first hole easily because it's a bit larger. When it reaches the second flange, it's like it just won't go past it. And even though I was using the press, I tried using the vise, I tried several things, it would not shove it past it. So what I had to do was to take my sanding disc and on the outside of the bushing go around it to kind of taper it and put oil on that, and then position it over the table, literally like so. And I put a plate of steel on top, and I used a BFH, and I hit it about 4 times, and that put it in place. So it just goes to show you each one's a little different. Try using the right tool, but sometimes the right tool, or supposedly the right tool, just isn't going to work. Finished off, here's the cast nut and cotter pin. I'm just putting it there so they don't get lost. We'll flip it over. And we still have to install our grease fitting. It's a lot of work, but it is worth it. Well, it took a little longer than I'd expected. And the takeaway from it, at least for me on this particular truck, was that the upper control arms weren't bad at all. Getting the old ones out, putting the new ones in. Putting the new ones in was a piece of cake. The bushings, getting the old ones out and putting them in actually was not bad at all, pretty easy. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube about doing the G-bodies, you know, the Monte Carlos, Malibus and such. And theirs seemed to pop right out. These didn't pop right out as easily as that, but it was not bad. Lower control arms. The ball joints aren't bad. Taking them out, putting them in. They're not bad at all. And the bumpers, of course, that's very simple. The lower control arm bushings, they're a beat down, I'll tell you right now. Getting them out is not that easy. I found that using a drill and drilling out the rubber, knocking out this steel insert in the middle that leaves you with a shell. I played around with it, and what I found worked well was to use a saw, whether it be a band saw or a cutoff wheel, and cut through the shell in a couple of places, and then put a piece of steel in between, and then use a hammer from the other side and knock them out. And when you do that, they actually do come out much easier. Sometimes trying to press them out, especially if they're the originals and they've been in there for 20 years or longer, you know, it's going to be tough. They may be rusty, especially you guys that live up north. Putting in the new ones, what I found was that the smaller bushing of the two, one's a little smaller than the other, that smaller bushing, in both cases, I had to take my sanding disc on my 4.5 inch cutoff wheel, put on the sanding disc, and go around the top edge and kind of bevel it to make it sharper, and then put oil on that, and then it would go in. Then it would even go in. Before that, I could pound on it and crank on it, and it simply would not move. So if you have trouble immediately and it doesn't want to go in, try that and see if that doesn't help you. The second thing is, you know, I used the press on a couple of things, like the lower ball joints. I used the ball joint and bushing press, or a little clamp that I have, and that worked for some things. But on these last ones, I literally used a hammer and a piece of steel, and I did have to use something on the bottom side so that it could drop down and protect this A-frame, but simply put it around here, hold it up over the edge of the workbench, and with about 4 hits with this big hammer, it went in. So there's not any one tool that works for everything. You may have to use a variety of things based on your circumstances and what you've got, and all these things are not exactly the same. I mean, from year to year and model to model, there could be a slight variation based on, you know, the assembly line process and what part they got from who and all that. Anyway, we're ready to go. We've got the control arms all finished. The only thing left to do is to put grease in these and fill them up. Then they're ready to go. I hope you got a tip or two off of this and got something out of it. That was the intent of the video. If you did, I'd appreciate a thumbs up. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you. Thanks for watching the whole video. If you've stayed with me this long, then you're probably wondering, why am I showing you these rotors and spindles and calipers? What's the deal? Tune into the next video and you'll find out. Thanks for watching.